Well, as we just heard there in the news, the New York Police Department has opened a criminal investigation into disgraced Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein. 30 women have now come forward, alleging that Harvey Weinstein used his power and influence to sexually harass, sexually assault, and in 3 cases, rape them. The producer's reputation is all but ruined. He's been fired from the company he established. His wife has left him and is now on his way to a rehab centre at an undisclosed location. Overnight, Harvey Weinstein spoke publicly for the first time since this scandal broke.
I'm not doing okay.
You're not?
I'm trying. I got to get help, guys. You know what? We all make mistakes. Second chance, I hope, okay?
Second chance. Harvey Weinstein has denied all the allegations. The fallout, though, could have major legal ramifications for the film executive, from civil suits to criminal charges and perhaps even jail. Doug Wigdor is a leading employment lawyer at the New York firm Wigdor Law. He represented, you might remember, the hotel maid in that sexual assault case against former IMF boss Dominique Strauss-Kahn. Doug Wigdor, welcome to RN Breakfast.
Thank you for having me.
As the details of these allegations against Harvey Weinstein become public and continue to mount, there are growing calls for him to be prosecuted and held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. What do you think the New York police are looking for when they say they've started this investigation?
Well, in the city of New York, in the state of New York, actually, unlike many states in the country, there is no statute of limitations for rape in the first degree. And by that, what I mean is that you can go back to something that happened 10, 15, or 20 years ago and potentially prosecute someone for rape in the first degree. I think that they had someone who the detectives originally found was credible a few years back, but unfortunately the DA's office, who is in charge of prosecuting these cases, did not go ahead with it. And now that everything has come out, they're looking for other victims who would have a credible story, maybe evidence of an outcry witness, somebody they told about the rape. Maybe there's physical evidence and other things that still exist that they could get their arms around to prosecute Mr. Weinstein.
So most of those women who have come and spoken out about against Harvey Weinstein have not been accusing him of rape. 3 have. He's denied the rape allegations. But any criminal investigation by the police would refer only to those, so far, 3 claims of rape. Is that right?
Well,
or the sexual assaults as well.
Yeah, well, if it's more recent, it would be the sexual assaults as well. Those have shorter statutes of limitations. Yeah, and then there's the civil claims as well. So we have 2 separate systems in America. And the Dominique Strauss-Kahn case, which is a good example, I represented the maid in that case back in May of 2011. And you'll recall that in the criminal case, the DA's office ultimately dismissed that case. But we represented the maid in the civil case, where we were able to vindicate her rights through a civil settlement. So all of the people who have been sexually harassed or sexually assaulted potentially could have civil claims against Harvey Weinstein. But again, those claims have statutes of limitations as well. At most in New York, they go back about 7 years.
I'm not sure how many of these women have come forward. Their claims are more recent than 7 years. Some of them go back a long way. Some of them have also been paid money, settlements from Harvey Weinstein or that company. 8 women over the years we know of. Would those settlements, would they negate their claims to be heard anyway? Would they have included affidavits repudiating the allegations, or...?
Well, that's a good question, one I've been asked, and I've been investigating claims myself. I've received calls from victims, and the people who have signed settlement agreements, those are typically enforced in the courts, but there are ways around those, especially if a person did not have a lawyer when they signed the agreement, that they weren't advised of their rights. So there are ways to try and get around those in terms of affidavits that they may have signed. Again, there are ways around those, but the better cases are going to be the ones where somebody has not settled, where somebody has not signed an affidavit, and where it's a more recent case.
So the criminal case may go ahead, or it may not, and we know the bar for these things is high, is difficult, and we saw that with Dominic Strauss-Kahn. I think we saw it too with Bill Cosby. But a civil case nevertheless can have dramatic effects on Harvey Weinstein's life and on the company he founded too, because we'd be talking significant amounts of money. What kind of money would we be speaking of?
Well, certainly multiple millions of dollars, especially if the victim was an employee, because then the company would be liable for the actions of Mr. Weinstein. So it would not only be him personally, but also the company, especially when we're hearing that the company had knowledge of his behavior for so many years and they turned a blind eye to it.
Or they had employees helping to organize these meets.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, there are stories about basically people handling and the affairs of trying to get him to places so he could do these sorts of things. Of course, this is not the only company that's doing that. We've seen, I'm representing 22 people against Fox News, and we have the same issues going on with Bill O'Reilly, who for many, many years was doing the same thing. So this is not just Harvey Weinstein, but the fact is the civil justice system can play a very important role because it has a punitive element in terms of the money damages. And whatever happens, his reputation is clearly going to be ruined for the rest of his life.
So, Doug Wigdor, are you saying there's no doubt that this will end up in some courtroom somewhere, civil or criminal?
I would suspect that it will. I do believe that there will be civil cases filed. I'm not as confident that the DA's office will follow through because, again, these cases are difficult to prove even when they happen last week or the week before. Trying to prove a rape case that happened years ago is a very difficult thing for a prosecutor. It's a different burden of proof in the criminal system. In the criminal system, the prosecutor has to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. In the civil case, you just need to prove your case by a preponderance of the evidence.
Sure.
So it's a much lower standard.
We're out of time, but a lot of people are asking, who next? Harvey Weinstein is unlikely to be only executive in Hollywood to have engaged in this kind of behaviour. What other rich and powerful Hollywood figures are next?
Well, I wish I could share that. Obviously, as a lawyer, you hear a lot of stories, most of which are confidential, given that the clients want to keep these things confidential.
Is this going to open that up, do you think?
Well, I think it started opening up with Dominic Strauss-Kahn. That was the beginning. We saw Bill Cosby after that. We saw Bill O'Reilly after that. Now we're seeing Harvey Weinstein. We saw what happened even with our president. I think we're going to see a lot more of this sort of outing of people and their behaviors as time goes on, for sure.
Doug Wigdor, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Doug Wigdor, leading employment lawyer at the New York firm Wigdor Law. You're listening to RM Breakfast. It's 6